Okay, so we have a more granular topic this week. We're talking about the changing demographic shifts year over year on Meta and how it's affecting direct and organic search traffic. I'd love your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. So this is something that a hypothesis I'm actively chasing down right now. I just got off the call with one of the like data analysts on one of the larger brands we work with, kind of sharing how we want to test this out. But the hypothesis is I'm noticing a number of brands, and this might be completely wrong. If anybody's out there that's like, no, this is probably what's happening, I would love the conversation because we're seeing a number of brands that performance as it reads through an MTA, as it reads on platform, performance looks good year over year. ROAS is up, all the click-based measurement features are up. However, when you look at their overall blended MER, it might be down year over, not all the time, but then really where there's a gap in revenue that we're seeing on a lot of brands is in direct, organic search, and any channels that would have been channels that came from being influenced somewhere else. Like they first had to hear about the brand and then they went and they searched it. So I'm asking myself the question, like, why is that? Why do we see great performance in performance marketing? However, all of these other channels are showing a pretty big drop. Like email, for instance, in one of the brands is seeing a big drop as well. So that's another kind of piece outside of the puzzle. But yeah, I'm asking myself that question. And one of the things that's come up recently is, all right, has deliverability, or not deliverability, but delivery skewed year over year to different demos that are more click based. So I've been chasing this down on a number of ad accounts. And one of the things that I'm seeing is that there is a lot of delivery skew to older demos on a number of different accounts year over year. It's going to the, kind of the 45 plus range, even 55 plus, 65 plus range. CPMs are getting driven up in that range significantly. And it's like, why is that? Why are the ads just getting delivered to all the older people, regardless of like what we're doing creative wise? And some of the brands were really like creative is on point. Like it's good and it is hitting that younger demo. It's just the revenue is just not showing up there. And I think it goes back to this kind of zero click reality that we're exploring. The Meta's even called out of people not clicking on ads, they're viewing ads, they're screenshotting them, they're Googling them later. So the question I have is the deliverability skew affecting the reach? It's affecting the reach and frequency on the younger demographics. And then is that what's contributing to that gap in organic and search revenue or direct and search revenue? So trying to look at like, all right, do we just need to force delivery to these younger demos? And then are we going to also see a lift on our direct and organic search? That was a lot there.
No,
Kind
that's
of, yeah.
yeah, there's a lot to unpack, but it's such a recurring theme. And I wonder if you just need the nerves of steel to say we're not even going to track last click. We're just going to push spend towards these demos and know that we're going to make up for it on what I'll call screenshot revenue.
I'd label that screenshot revenue. You almost have to. Like we're structuring a test right now in one of the larger brands using house and value rules. And that's one of the things I think is you know, becoming a really effective lever in Meta right now is the use of value rules to redistribute your spend towards those cohorts that you're looking for, whether it's platform, whether it's demo. There's a number of different ways that you can slice it and dice it by bidding down, bidding up. On one brand, we applied value rules because we needed to specifically hit like a 25 to 35-year-old woman, and we bid up and so clearly saw delivery on those campaigns that we applied it start to skew in that direction.
Hmm.
So it's like we're getting the levers back without having to like adjust the ad set level targeting. We can just apply a rule, which I love. But yeah, this is something I'm trying to kind of suss out right now is like, okay, why are we seeing great performance reported in the MTA, reported in Meta, but there's still this gap in revenue that's coming from direct and organic search. So yeah, you almost like you said, you have to kind of rip the band-aid and just be willing to lean in and test it. And I think this is kind of going back to some of our other conversations of like, at the end of the day, yes, performance marketing has performance at the beginning of it, but it's still marketing. And you need to think of it like you would if we didn't have the resources and the tools that we get with good measurement and targeting capabilities of these platforms. So, in some accounts, I literally am just going back to the fundamentals of like, all right, we just need to make sure we're getting a certain saturation at these audiences that we know are key. And those audiences aren't always like, I'm not saying like interest or lookalike. I'm saying like, oh, like this is a VIP list, or this is a, repeat customer, or these people have bought 3 times, or, you can get granular there, and you could craft campaigns that are just forcing a message to that cohort. And you're not having to pay the CPM of a conversion based campaign, so to say.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. You need to rip the band-aid off to reach that audience. And yeah, sorry, I totally had a follow up to that. It's escaped me. But
It's all good.
I
Yeah.
did have a question though. You're setting up value rules. Can you give me an example of how you set that up and what levers Meta's giving you?
Yeah, it's on the account level. So you go into your account settings. It's where you edit your, any of your account wide audience exclusions or rules. And it's called value rules. You go in and you can create these different value rule sets. So like one set, for instance, might be bid up 20% on females 25 to 45. Bid down, 10% on anyone over 65. And then when you go into your ad sets, there's a new feature where you can apply different value rules that you make to that ad set. And what's great is like you're not resetting the learning on the ad set, you're not relaunching the ad set. It's the ad set just stays as is, and you just apply it to the top of this, which I really love because a lot, advertisers will have ad sets that live on for months, sometimes years, and you don't want to disrupt those if you don't have to. And being able to come in and say, hey, we're going to run a rule on this for 2 weeks. We're going to analyze delivery. I recommend when you're analyzing that delivery to do a breakdown on whatever breakdown the value rule is associated with. Look at it over like a, you know, couple week window at least, and compare comp against the previous period and just see what the shift in delivery was, the shift in CPM, shift in, conversions.
Yeah, so kind of have the graph side by side, one before value rule, one after, and see how that change in
Hmm.
spend is going to reflect a change in numbers.
Yeah, yeah, or just do conditional formatting and compare it, and so then you'll
Right,
get
right.
reds on greens, and you'll just see where that's shifted. It's really, really interesting to see in a lot of ways meta listening to those rules and it actually affecting delivery.
And how often are you making changes to value rules?
You know, every it depends. Like so far, it's still such a new thing for us that it's limited. It's like, because you want to put a new rule on, you want to measure it over the course of a few weeks, and then you might test a different rule. I think it's great because those value rules are basically your opportunity to give Meta more insight that it's not going to get naturally. So like Meta's not going to know that your primary customer is most of the time 25 years old.
Mm,
You're just telling them, I want people that purchase, and it's figuring out, okay, this person purchases, let's find more of them.
yeah.
So when you put a value rule in, you're giving metadata essentially that they're not able to get, you know, just via the CAPI or, the
It's
pixel or your landing
it's
page.
kind of like prompting in a way because they rely on AI for a lot of this stuff. But even AI, if you don't tell it what to think or what output you want, it's not going to know. It's just
Exactly.
knows.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So
So I guess going back to the lost attribution or screenshot revenue, how do you overcome it? What's the solution? Is there a solution? Is there a new tool? Is it tracking? Is it h- how are people
yeah,
thinking about this?
a lot of people aren't, like, candidly, it's not a big part of the conversation right now, at least in our spheres of like, all right, how much revenue is not showing up in our MTA. Like the other debate or the other side of that kind of hypothesis is maybe that because tracking is getting better, that revenue is actually just getting claimed and showing up in platform now. And it's not, it's almost a matter of moving revenue. And it's not necessarily organic. So that's one theory. But even when you look at like last non-direct touch and you see where that revenue is breaking down, it's there's a pocket there that's missing. I do think that like Northbeam's deterministic views is going to really solve a lot of these questions. One thing we're seeing there is that Pinterest is a lot more kind of incremental than obviously click based measurement is gonna attribute. So like what's great about their deterministic views too is it connects more, it's kind of the bridge between their modeling and their MTA, and it gives you this real sense of like where where that you know not just the click but where that actual impression and view data is influencing that sales journey as well.
And sorry, just listening in MTA.
Oh yeah, the MMM multimedia mixed media modeling. MTA is multi-touch attribution.
Yeah.
So
Great.
yeah.
So you find that on a platform like Pinterest, the is more useful because it's more of a save and come back to later platform. Like I think of, you create a pin
Yeah.
and it's inspiration for something. Either it's like your house or a wedding, or it's normally an event
Yeah.
where you're gonna spend money.
Yeah. I heard somebody explain Pinterest to me once as like it's the it's the it's for inspiration, right? It's before they're even in market or know what they're looking for.
Sure.
It's like the very start of that user journey. It's not the like top of funnel even.
Mhm.
It's the inspiration to the funnel. So I think like getting data from is really helpful for that because you're able to correlate like that kind of where that customer journey ultimately is starting versus where it's finishing and dividing your media dollars up accordingly.
I wonder if Pinterest does like consumer reports or trend reports. That would be really interesting to see if there's
Yeah.
commonalities on what people are searching for.
Oh yeah, there's a ton. And then also even like, it's very seasonal in regards to like, different things like Mother's Day or gifting, holiday gifts or whatever. It's like Pinterest is, you know, it's an extremely ripe platform
Mhm.
in regards to reaching that customer early in their journey.
And a lot of these attribution debates and conversations we're having, I think it's so important for you because you work with a lot of these bigger brands. For the smaller companies that are, say around $1 million, give or take, it's a lot easier to figure out where your revenue comes from. If you have some organic socials that go viral and they do really well, you see that spike in revenue, it's kind of easy to attribute it. But when your revenue is consistently hundreds of thousands per day, it's really tough to angle that back and figure out where it's all coming from. You have distributors, you have huge social team, you got your paid ads running on different platforms. So I guess that's where this becomes even more important.
Yeah, what's interesting is some we're trying to troubleshoot, not even troubleshoot, but like work with a client on now. They're a big TV network, and they have also an e-commerce store, a very large e-commerce business that's directly linked to that TV network. Well, it's really hard to measure because they also do performance marketing through Meta, AppLovin, like all your standard Google, all your standard channels. But what's really hard is measuring and getting targets on the like granular level for some of their products. Also, by the way, they have like 40,000 products in their catalog, right? Massive store. It's really hard because so much of that data just gets washed out by their organic and direct, traffic. So it's like really hard to measure because all of the performance marketing platforms are just claiming every sale. And so keeping it honest is really difficult. You can't like really approach that from a top down or a bottom up approach where it's like, all right, we're going to start a campaign at a small budget and we're going to look in platform and we're going to see a good CPA and we're going to double spend and then we're going to do this whole thing because it's like really what they need to be looking at is starting from the top of like, okay, we're going to do an incrementality test on a channel level, and we're going to, rather than have our budget reflect performance, we're going to set a budget and get performance to reflect that budget, right? Meaning, all right, we're going to allocate X million a month to this channel. However, we're going to measure its incrementality based on these geo holdouts and using a measurement partner, and then getting an incrementality read on the channel, and then breaking down into the like tactics on what the best way in that channel to deploy it for the most incremental impact. Because these these a lot of these bigger brands, like, or it's either that or you shift how you think of these performance marketing channels. It becomes more about brand and supporting the brand and just making sure that anybody that's aware of them already has easy access to go and buy more products when they're on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a unique situation to be in where when you launch an ad, there's a higher likelihood that your customers will see it than non-customers. That's just how big you are. But this is the importance of setting up custom metrics. I read the LinkedIn post that you wrote today that's going out on Friday. So I guess by the time everybody watching this, they'll see this, so you're going to know what I'm talking about. But we're talking about custom metrics. So FTIR is a big one, your first time incremental reach, and the percentage of new customers that are going to see your post versus existing customers. And I know that we're
Hmm.
speaking about another account, a very large, I don't want to disclose anything, but a very large account that you're working on. And you talked about going from, I think, a 4% increase in new customers to a 6.5% increase the following year, which is a really big deal. It sounds small to a smaller brand. You want to grow a lot faster than that, but when you're in the high nine-figure range, that's a large percentage increase. And when you get to that size, you're also, every new customer is probably stealing, not stealing, but taking market share from one of your larger competitors. And that's the situation that you run into for some of these large companies.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's both sides of it too. It's like you want to buy new customers and get them at a good rate, but then you also have to figure out the balance of, like, especially if it's a brand that maybe has a high repeat customer rate, it's a consumable, or cosmetics, like maybe, you also need to defend your customers and make sure that, like, when they're in market again, like, they're coming back to you versus somebody else that's trying to buy them. So finding that balance between retention spend and prospecting spend is really important. One thing that especially this time of year being September, that is really important to be looking at is cost per 1,000 accounts reached, and just making sure that you could bring that number down, making that a KPI and how you optimize your creative, because getting that expansion on your actual reach, not just your impressions, is important right now because these new people reached are going to end up being the customers that you market to in November when you're running your Cyber 5 sale.
A really good point. That's a really good point. So do you pay a lot of attention in the percentage difference between reach and impressions because you want to make sure that your reach is getting new accounts?
Yeah, and even looking at frequency and keeping a pulse on that, like, one of the things I really like about the new customer, event, like the custom event for new customers, is just like you get generally I've gotten like lower frequency on those campaigns. But then one thing that you also have to be conscious of is, because it is constantly optimizing to these net new people, is like you could potentially be losing frequency on cohorts that really need to have those touch points. So that's another part of that kind of hypothesis I'm working out regarding the delivery, skew year over year, is like, all right, are we reaching these younger cohorts and are they just not getting hit enough? And is it a matter of frequency with them, uh, versus reach? Yeah, it's really, I don't know, I have a soft spot for like brand owners, because it can be very, and even team marketing teams in brands, because it can be very easy to be in a silo, and a lot of marketing teams, their level of experience is that brand itself a lot of times, especially if you have a brand that scaled quickly and grew, and it's like their purview is literally their own silo. Or it's people that came from another similar brand, but still their purview is just two brands, and I think the most important thing for mid-sized brand owners to be aware of is, like, stay curious, like stay ruthlessly hungry for information. And the best brand owners that I've seen kind of get to those next levels are the ones that are the most networked. They're in like every e-commerce community, Slack, WhatsApp group that you can imagine, and they're just asking as many questions as possible, because it's information is power, and if you could get the right information that you need, at that time, to kind of come over whatever things you're trying to solve in your brand. I've also seen the flip side where brands don't do that and they're very limited in their thinking, and like it results in, you know, negative growth cycles, which is, very unfortunate. So, and I think that's one of the things, like, you know, to work with agencies. It's super like valuable. The right agency, like finding agency partners because they do have that purview in other brands and they can provide insights that you're not going to be able to get in your own silo. So I think that's one of the reasons. Yeah, I was just gonna say that's one of the reasons I love this job is because like I get to fly between all these different businesses, which are each their own puzzle, and they have their own problems. But like you assimilate the data and you learn things that are applicable to these other challenges that you're facing, and you're able to, hopefully bring value and create strategies that are going to move the needle. That's very unique to that problem. We just launched the newsletter, so signing up to our weekly newsletter. It's our conversations kind of mapped on paper. It's becoming a really cool database. Or reaching out, just connecting. I always love to talk e-commerce with brand owners and other agency owners. So yeah, I think definitely signing up to the Beyond ROAS newsletter is a good way to stay up to date with the things we're thinking about. Cool. Thanks a lot. We'll talk soon.